Welcome to Rambling of a Madman. In this episode, I was thinking to talk about art. When talking about art, some might think that this is not a topic for me. I'm not that sophisticated or I'm not that interested to go into the arts. I was thinking about this subject as well, but when I was a child and I was learning about art, I got to know that there are more aspects to art than we think. The art today may be the famous parts or the parts that we think of when saying the word art could be a part that people who call themselves very sophisticated spends millions and millions of dollars just to purchase something that seems different or something that seems not a art at all and call it art, and they will blame the others to being that because the lack of sophistication, they will not understand it, something like that. Oh, it's basically, to put it in another way, just a way to hide your money. But art is more than that. Art is expression, art is communication. Let's think of, we have to start from the history, from to look at this and to see what is art and what is art for humanity. We all know about the cave paintings that were there. That is the essential storytelling method for uh, centuries, millennia. That is how our ancestors showed us or passed on the message, how they live and what they did, what were the animals there, and so on. But at that time, that wasn't the in prehistoric times when these arts were drawn, that wasn't the idea of it. The idea of it is for communication. So in that way we can look at art as one of the first languages that were there to pass on a message, to communicate with each other. And we all know the importance of communication. This was a vital step in developing the society, and lot of information were conveyed. Were there people, there what are the animals there, what are the animals that can be hunted, things like that. So these cave paintings, they were the first languages that were there. Let's go a little bit it, forward in time. Maybe I was looking into the Chinese language, and the Chinese language is all about, they have a kind of a big alphabet with around 12,000 or more letters, and they will keep on adding. This is because of an interesting fact. Chinese letters, characters, are actually expression of art. That is how they became characters. Before being characters, their characters is a representation of a certain scenario. They want to say the letter for the field is kind of like the field, the paddy field, and that made that particular form, we can look it as art, and that art turned into characters. This can be seen in many languages that go beyond history to prehistoric times, like the Chinese language, which is been evolved for a long time. It started from art. Even if you take the Egyptian hieroglyphs, this can be seen. So we can say, oh, Art is something that helped us to communicate it in the past, and even today, uh, languages that are thriving immensely are born out of this particular method of arts. So, looking at hieroglyphs and looking at cave paintings give us one impression: communication, passing on the message, communicating with one another. So, what did actually art do before it is the modern arts today is actually showed us a way to communicate, and this was the main purpose of art: communication. It was not about the colors, it was not about the lines, how sensitive it was, how complicated it was. It was not about the hidden stories or complexities. It is drawing a message for its simplest form, that was art initially, which was used for communication. This was the main topic. This was the main thought process that actually made me talk about this actually to make made me go through this ramble, because today art is so much a different thing, and I feel like with the modern art and things that are coming in with different ideas which doesn't like to exist with one another, different likings of people will say this particular type of art is better, but other types of art is not. But the main point of art is passing on a message, a conversation between in the artist or the art itself and the person who's looking at it. This if you go for the most primal levels, art is basically that, conveying a message to the person who's looking at the art. Whether it is cave paintings where people are hunting a bull, or hieroglyphs that are there to say a certain sentence, or even languages such as Chinese, which are still prevailing very well today, adapted from a method, sort of a art, a sort of a representation, these characters. And it is quite amazing to see, if you look at it that way, that art is the first form of communication for human beings. But as time went on, languages were formed, art turned into characters, and art after that took a life of its own, adapted to be much more vibrant, much more colorful, much more complex. And through portraits, through sequence arts, it started a different role where storytelling was taken into the next level. Then most of the art during the times of the Renaissance, or even before that, different cultures, different different areas around the world used art for storytelling. Maybe a story about their society, maybe a story about their gods, maybe a story about the life that they live, the jobs that they do, even the simplest of that, or a special incident that happened during their lifetime. And art was there to preserve that story for millenniums, to show that this is what our life was, this is our story to the future. Though most of these are not considered as masterpieces, they are the primal purpose of these is not to be complicated or become a masterpiece. It is simply to tell the story for the person who's looking at the art. This can be seen in even hieroglyphs are kind of in hieroglyphs or other art forms around the world. You can see it in South Asia, you can see it in my country as well. There's a sequence of arts. They are not proportional, maybe they are not properly, colors are not complicatedly drawn or the lines are not complicatedly drawn, but the idea of that art is not to be complicated but to be a storytelling medium. And I think the job of storytelling was taken on by art for considerable amount of time. I can say till film and photography came in, art was the main way of telling a story as well as preserving our thoughts or our view. Portraits were drawn of people just to keep them alive after they go away. And this is all possible because of art. But in the modern era, art is again, and the storytelling nature of art was replaced because cinema, digital video came into action with photography, making in the need of art to tell the story irrelevant. Well, one of the best examples could be the amount of people who would like to read comic books and the amount of people who would like to watch a movie that is made out of a comic book. I think it is safe to say that the difference is immense between those two numbers. So simply art has being from a language to a storytelling medium. But what is art today? What is the purpose of art today? Is it simply for the rich people to hide their money? Or is it simply to look at things which sometimes makes sense, sometimes doesn't make sense, and say, oh, this is modern art and this is valuable. People who doesn't understand it or people who doesn't like it uh, isn't complex enough to understand art, or something, isn't it? Art has become something pompous in this world because half of the people who are working in this industry wants to hide their money eh, by keeping art and increasing the value. But does that art actually have value? Is it doing the thing that art should do? Is the question that is there. And we understand normally today we give value to art looking at the complexity of it, looking at how different it is from what we have seen, or the time it consumed to draw, or how lifelike the characters there is. Simply the best example that there can be is Mona Lisa. Simply a magnificent piece of work which shows which saves a person throughout centuries, the memory passed on, the complexity of the drawing, the complexity of the colors, the complexity of the lines, the reality of the art mesmerizes humans and adds value to that art. But masterpieces like this is not the only art there is. There are simple things. There are art all around us if you see it properly. And that art is the driving force, sometimes can be more valuable. We don't know. It's not art is not all about making in the most complicated art, or art is not all about simply making a very simple thing or splashing a, a small amount of color on a white canvas and trying to give meaning to it and saying that this is a sophisticated thing. Art is simply passing on the message, having a conversation. This is what I think art is about. The best example in modern era is the art that is drawn by Banksy. He has drawn a tremendous art about Brexit, where the British Parliament is represented by monkeys. This art is an art of criticism, but it conveys a message that the dissatisfaction of people in Britain about their parliament when coming into Brexit. The message is strong, the message is critical, but the message is clear. It's a conversation starter. It is a masterpiece, but it should be a masterpiece not only because it is a brilliant art where the animals look lifelike, the colors are incredibly matched. It is a masterpiece because it speaks to the people. It speaks to everybody. Whoever, whatever the language they speak, if they see this picture, they know what is the problem. They know what the picture, the art is talking about. It starts a conversation. It tells a story. And that is what art do. Another simple art of Banksy comes into mind. During this pandemic era, he drew a art where a child is now playing with a nurse as the child's superhero rather than using Batman, Spider-Man or Superman. The drawing is one of the most simplest that there can be, but the impression, the conversation, the story, the message that it gives out is stronger than anything else. It shows how valuable our medical staff, doctors, nurses, any ambulance drivers, to every support staff that there is in our health system during this time. And this whole message, a message of thanks for the people who are working in the health sector, and the message to the other people that we must respect them for the work they do, putting their lives at risk. This whole story is shown by a simple art which is drawn to tell a story, to start the conversation. And this is what art is about. This is simply what art is about. Doesn't matter the language you speak, Doesn't matter the views you have, doesn't matter the religion, the caste, the country, the whatever you use to separate you from the other. You look at a art and you will directly understand a story. So when next time you look at a piece of art or sculpture in that matter, try to figure out what is the story that is it's trying to tell you, and rather than trying to figure out which is the more complex dab of paint from the other dab of paint which is there in the next canvas in modern art, try to look at the simple art that there is and what it's trying to tell a story, or try to start a conversation. Because let's face it, if the art and the message is trying to give is too complex, people doesn't understand. So a great art have to be in a level that everybody who's looking at it can understand. One of the things I think, one of the storytelling nature of art that is we don't consider much about but is a very strong driving force is the arts that have been drawn in the paper, the small comic art. It's always a comic which makes you laugh, but it tells a true story, a problem in the society, maybe in politics, maybe in other sectors, but it is a, problem that is there in the society at that given time, and it's a great conversation starter. It's a simple piece of art in a paper. It could be black and white. It doesn't take any time to draw. It's not complicated, but it does what art's supposed to do: convey a message, tell a story, start a conversation. Therefore, what I think is we have to understand art is a language that we don't need to learn, but we can all understand. And rather than spending money, or rather than trying to look into things that they call art as modern art and only sophisticated people can understand, art should be a thing for everybody. It's not for the high class people. Because I was watching this it's a documentary or some small clip of it where modern art is there, and I saw this, the news is about modern art galleries not even letting people who are famous to come into and buy art from it because they think that they don't understand, thus as increasing the price of that art. And basically it's kind of a, I don't know, money laundering or a safe way to save money from tax for those the people who call that a higher class. Art is not about that. Art doesn't know any class. If everybody can understand the art, the better it is. Because art is a language, art is a conversation starter. Yes, we have to appreciate complex arts. We have to appreciate the effort that is there to draw a picture that is like Mona Lisa, which put us in a trance when looking at it. But we also have to understand that art is something for everybody, whether it is complex or not. The main point of art is to convey a message, to start a conversation, to start a discussion. And we should appreciate more and we should value more such art rather than trying to add complicated or sophistications for art which actually isn't sophisticated or not. Because if you start reviewing, you can review a piece of paper to its absolute atoms to make it a complicated thing, but that doesn't make it go much more valuable than a piece of paper. It's just a piece of paper. So a pencil line drawn on such a piece of paper, if somebody comes and told you, look, this is art, and if you say you don't understand, or it's not art, it's just a piece of paper and a line drawn across it, and if that person says you're not sophisticated enough or complicated enough, don't worry, because that person is not sophisticated or complicated enough to understand what is art and what is art is all about. Because if you go to a chapel, if you go to a temple, you will see art, you will see sculptures, and these sculptures, this art, tell us a story, pass us a message. This is the main fundamental of art. There are people around the world who are gifted, who can draw without much effort. There are the other people who have to learn how to draw, and there are some people, they will stick to their method of they know. Sometimes drawing, not sometimes, actually most of the time, drawing a human being, a human figure, is not an easy thing. And the people draw human figures in different ways, and we can call it, trying to change it is much hard. So we look at it, and some we say are talented because it's more lifelike, and others we say no. And I think that is not art is all about. Art is all about starting a conversation, whether it is a lifelike figure or a box that is drawn like a human. We have to really ask the quality of it from the story that is being told. That is the thought process that had made me ramble about art. Because every time I see when people say modern art, it's all about the colors, the brushstrokes, the complicated method that is used to draw, or the sophistication of the lines that are used, the realistic nature of the character. Oh, it is so unrealistic, so bizarre, that is art. And I don't, and I was thinking, what is the fundamentals of art? How did it start? What is it there for? And it made me realize that today the fundamental nature of art, the storytelling nature, or preserving a particular event in history or something like that, whatever it is, the conversation starter, the storyteller, the part of art is fading away. And I think we should, as a society, much more appreciate that part of art, and weight must be given to that part of art. Because from the simplest stop sign on the road, or the simplest sign that will tell it's a one way, thus saving life and putting order into a chaos world of driving, saving lives, to conveying a story in a comic, in the papers, showing that maybe a political corruption as a joke, in in the cartoon, starting a conversation, talking softly into a deep topic. It's a hard thing to do, but art does it. It's not the finest, it's not the best, according to some people, but we should understand that the fundamentals of art is that it is always trying to tell a story, start a conversation from the fundamental language we know, a visual representation. I don't know whether I'm correct or wrong when coming into this point of art, but thinking about this subject, thinking about there was a time when I studied art briefly, and thinking about the experience I got from that, and thinking about how these languages were formed by art, put me into this train of thought. I hope you guys enjoy and took something, to got a thought provoking in ramble, but this is how I feel about art. We have to appreciate the complexity of drawing such material, but it have to tell a story to become a great art. Well, thank you very much for listening. Be safe, be healthy. Ayubowan.